Meanwhile, we may not be seeing the last of Vice President Joe Biden. The VP is a potential pick for Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, should she win the presidency. According to reports, she's considering Biden as the Secretary of State. Joining us right now, former Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor, Karl Rove. Karl, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Your reaction to that potential selection for Secretary of State?
Well, if she were to win and she were to appoint Joe Biden, there'd be two things that would come out of it. One of which would be we would be enormously entertained for the next 4 years. For as long as he occupies that office, we'd be enormously entertained. And second of all, it would signify in all likelihood that the White House was content to move the foreign policy decision-making completely out of the State Department and lodge it at the National Security Council in the West Wing, because Joe Biden has been wrong on every major policy issue since he entered the United States Senate in 1972. I mean, he has been wrong on everything. And I find it hard to believe that Hillary Clinton, having had to interact with him in the Situation Room for 4 years, would decide that she could trust his judgment. Remember, the two of them were on opposite sides in advising President Obama over the issue of the raid on to take out Osama bin Laden. She was for it. Joe Biden against it. So, I mean, he's got bad judgment. He's a nice fella, entertaining as all get out, but I think this would be an utter disaster if she were to get elected and then pick him.
They were also against each other in terms of who to run, right? I mean, Obama initially wanted Biden to run for president.
Well, initially Biden wanted Biden to run for president. And,
he was going to come out. He even said, I'm considering it, I'm considering it during the primary season.
Well, sometimes, you know, the old team of rivals theory is that sometimes you strengthen your administration by picking people like that whom you have respect for, who represent a significant element of the party, and whom you think their strengths will help you in office. But again, I find it hard to believe that Hillary, having had to deal with, look, he's an entertaining guy, but he's so sort of semi-goofus. And I can just imagine what it's like in sitting in the Situation Room, listening to him blather on about something. And so, no, I find it highly unlikely. And if it did, it'd be a sign.
Karl, I appreciate just somebody who might accidentally tell you the truth about something in Washington. Yeah, unintentional. Quite frankly, even if it's unintentional. In terms of all these people that Hillary Clinton has had out on the campaign trail for her, yesterday it was the First Lady. It's going to be the President himself in the days to come. Does that signal that she's nervous?
No, it just signifies she's got resources and she's properly deploying them. Anybody who's in her position, that is to say, has access to the incumbent President of the United States, the incumbent First Lady, popular Democrats like Elizabeth Warren, who can appeal to a dissatisfied part of the party. This is smart on her part to deploy them. I know from personal experience talking to people in the Trump hierarchy, they are concerned about not having a army of surrogates out there acting on their behalf, and inquired how Governor Bush of Texas in 2000 did it facing an incumbent administration, and how did he have surrogates out there to fill some of the news holes in critical states when he couldn't be there. What you want to have is, while you have the candidates, the presidential and vice presidential candidates in key battleground states, you want to have subordinate voices someplace else besides those places in order to make certain that the local news, if you're in Florida, you want somebody to get you news coverage in Iowa. If you got your vice presidential candidate in Pennsylvania, you want somebody to be making news for you in Nevada. And she's smart to deploy these people.
I'll be really blunt in terms of the surrogates for Donald Trump, who I've seen and encountered on the air. There was not a coordinated effort, and there was not a coordinated message among a lot of these people throughout this campaign. And it was really, there was a big gaping hole.
Karl, along those same lines, an earlier guest, we were talking about the great gift that the Obamacare blow-up, the Clinton Incorporated emails that are coming out of WikiLeaks. This is an incredible gift to the Trump campaign, but an earlier guest suggested he doesn't really have the ground game and the infrastructure to get that message out in the short time between now and the election. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, on the ground game, the Republican National Committee was given the responsibility for generating the ground game, and they've done as good a job as a national committee can do. The difficulty is the presidential candidate is the collector and funnel for volunteers. There are a certain number of people who will respond to the Republican Party in any given state and turn out. Where you get the additional oomph is from the presidential campaign being completely focused on generating volunteers from his rallies and other activities and funneling them into the campaign, into the ground game. That's not happening in this election.
Yeah, really.
Trump has these vast groups of people who show up at his rallies, but there's no systematic effort to funnel them. At rallies in the final 2 weeks of the 2004 campaign, we literally had buses outside every venue, and we had people who would extol the attendees at the rallies to volunteer and say, look, we've even got buses outside. Will you please give us the next 3 hours to go hit critical neighborhoods in our community? And every single time we filled those buses. In fact, we kept adding buses because it became so popular. And there's none of that kind of activity. And the Internet makes it so much easier. You want to volunteer for Donald Trump at this rally? Text 12345 right now and go right over there to that exit, and we'll sign you up immediately. None of that happens.
So, having said all that, Karl, do you think he could come back and win this or no?
Well, look, the race is closing. Not a lot. In the Real Clear Politics average, it's gone from 7 to just over 5. But it is moving, and we typically see in the final stages of the election is that it does tighten up. Here's his challenge. Romney carried states with 206 electoral college votes. You need to get 270. He's not. Trump is now not ahead in 2 of those states, Arizona and North Carolina. So he's at 180. First, he's got to win 2 states where he's ahead that were won by Barack Obama, Ohio and Iowa. That would give him 204. He's close in 3 states, Arizona 1.5, Florida 1.8. Nevada 2.0. If he won those 3 states, he'd get to 250. And obviously the big enchilada is Florida.
Right.
Then he's got to win North Carolina, gets him to 260. 265, but then he's got to win something else.
Okay, to get to 270. Karl, great to see you as always. Thank you so much. Karl Rove joining us there.